The sound of my backup generator sputtering to its final death was almost poetic, considering what I had been through over the past 48 hours with Patricia Morrison and her ridiculous HOA power trip. I stood in my garage in the dark, listening to that engine cough one last time before silence filled the space, and I felt absolutely no regret about what I had done. Let me back up and explain how I ended up in this situation, sitting in the dark in my suburban Phoenix home while my neighbors' houses blazed with light from their generators. My name is Brennan, and I am a 42-year-old software consultant who works from home. I moved to the Saguaro Heights development in Scottsdale, Arizona about 3 years ago, thinking I had found the perfect place to settle down. The houses were beautiful, the neighborhood was quiet, and the desert landscape was exactly what I wanted after spending 20 years in rainy Seattle. What I did not account for was Patricia Morrison, the president of our homeowners association, and the embodiment of every nightmare HOA story you have ever heard. Patricia was 53 years old, wore her blonde hair in that specific suburban helmet style that seemed to be a requirement for middle-aged women in positions of minor authority, and she drove a white Mercedes SUV with a personalized license plate that read, HOA Boss. I am not making that up. She actually had that on her car. For the first year I lived in Saguaro Heights, Patricia and I had minimal interaction. I kept my lawn maintained according to the HOA rules, painted my house only in approved colors, and generally stayed out of everyone's way. I thought I was doing everything right. Then I installed solar panels on my roof. Now, you would think that in Arizona, where we get approximately 320 days of sunshine per year, solar panels would be encouraged. You would be wrong. Patricia showed up at my door exactly 48 hours after the installation crew finished their work, clutching her tablet and wearing a pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. "Mr. Brennan," she said, not bothering with pleasantries, "I need to inform you that your solar panel installation is in violation of HOA Regulation Section 7.4 subsection B. I stared at her, genuinely confused. I checked all the regulations before I had them installed. There's nothing in there about solar panels. The regulation states that no homeowner shall install any external fixtures that create excessive glare or visual pollution, Patricia said, reading from her tablet. Your solar panels create glare that can be seen from the street. That's not what that regulation is about, I argued. That's about decorative lights and reflective lawn ornaments. Solar panels are specifically protected under Arizona state law. You cannot prohibit them. Patricia's face turned the particular shade of red that I would become very familiar with over the following months. "We'll see about that, Mr. Brennan." She filed a complaint with the HOA board, which she controlled completely. The board consisted of her best friend Denise, and 3 other neighbors who were too afraid to disagree with her about anything. They sent me a formal notice demanding I remove the panels within 30 days or face daily fines of $100. I hired a lawyer. It cost me $3,000, but the lawyer sent a very polite letter explaining Arizona's solar rights laws and how the HOA's regulations could not supersede state law. The HOA backed down, but Patricia never forgave me. From that day forward, I was on her list. Over the next 2 years, Patricia found every possible reason to make my life difficult. My grass was supposedly half an inch too long. My mailbox needed repainting even though I had painted it 6 months earlier. My garbage cans were visible from the street for 12 minutes longer than allowed after collection day because I was on a work conference call and could not bring them in immediately. Each violation came with a formal letter, a hearing before the board, and inevitably a fine that I had to fight. But I endured it all because I loved my house, and I was not going to let Patricia Morrison drive me out of my own home. I documented everything, took photos with timestamps, and kept meticulous records of every interaction. My lawyer told me I was building a great case for harassment, but I wanted to exhaust all other options before going nuclear with a lawsuit. Then the power grid situation changed everything. In late July 2025, Phoenix experienced one of the worst heat waves in recorded history. Temperatures reached 123 degrees Fahrenheit for 7 consecutive days. The power grid, already strained from everyone running their air conditioning at maximum capacity, started experiencing rolling blackouts. The utility company, Southwest Power and Electric, announced that certain neighborhoods would experience planned outages of up to 8 hours at a time to prevent a total grid collapse. Saguaro Heights was on the list for potential blackouts. When I saw the announcement, I immediately made arrangements to protect my home office setup and my ability to work. My solar panels kept my house running during the day, but I needed backup power for nighttime and for the days when outages might extend beyond daylight hours. I researched extensively and decided to purchase a whole house backup generator system. Not one of those cheap portable units you get at a hardware store, but a serious Generac system that ran on propane and could power my entire house indefinitely as long as I kept it fueled. The unit cost me $12,000 installed, but it was worth it for the peace of mind and the ability to continue working without interruption. The installation went smoothly. The generator sat on a concrete pad on the side of my house, properly screened by the decorative wall that separated my property from my neighbors. I had checked every single HOA regulation before installation. The generator was not visible from the street. It met all noise ordinances, and it was professionally installed with all proper permits from the city. I also arranged for fuel delivery from Desert Propane Services, a local company that serviced most of the generators in the Phoenix metro area. They would deliver propane to my 500-gallon tank buried next to the generator every month, or more frequently if needed during heavy usage periods. Everything was perfect. I was prepared. I had backup power, climate control, and the ability to work through any outage. I felt smart and responsible. Then, Patricia found out about the generator. I was not home when she apparently walked down my driveway and around the side of my house to inspect the installation. I only found out about her trespassing because my Ring camera caught her examining the generator pad and taking photos with her phone. When I watched the footage later, I could see her mouth moving as she muttered to herself, clearly angry about something. The letter arrived 2 days later. According to Patricia and the HOA board, my generator violated regulations regarding mechanical equipment installations and required prior written approval, which I had not obtained. The letter demanded I appear before the board at their next meeting to explain myself. I showed up at the meeting with copies of every regulation, my installation permits, and documentation showing that the generator met all requirements. There was no regulation requiring prior approval for backup generators. I had checked with my lawyer to be absolutely certain. Patricia sat at the head of the table in the community center conference room, flanked by her board members. She looked at my documentation with the expression of someone who had already made up her mind. "Mr. Brennan, your installation of this generator without board approval shows a pattern of disrespect for the community standards we work so hard to maintain," she said. "There is no requirement for board approval," I replied calmly. "I have copies of every regulation here. I followed all the rules. The rules require that any significant modification to a property be submitted for aesthetic review, Patricia countered. The generator is not visible from any public area, I said. I made sure of that specifically. It's screened by the existing wall. It can be heard, Patricia said. That constitutes a disturbance. The noise level is below the city's maximum decibel limit. I had it tested. Here's the report. The meeting went back and forth like this for 20 minutes. Finally, Patricia declared that the board would take the matter under advisement and issue a ruling within 10 days. I knew that meant she was going to try to find some way to force me to remove the generator or fine me into bankruptcy. I left that meeting frustrated but not particularly worried. I had followed every rule. I had documentation. There was nothing she could actually do to me legally. That was my first mistake, underestimating Patricia Morrison's commitment to making my life hell. The first blackout hit Saguaro Heights on August 3rd. The power went out at 3 in the afternoon when the temperature outside was 119 degrees. Within 60 seconds, my generator automatically kicked on. The transition was seamless. My air conditioning never stopped running. My internet stayed connected. My office equipment continued working without interruption. I watched through my windows as neighbors emerged from their houses, sweating and fanning themselves. Some got in their cars and drove away, presumably to find somewhere with air conditioning. Others pulled out portable generators and started trying to at least run a few fans. Patricia's house, I noticed, had a generator too. Of course she did. Her unit had been installed before she became HOA president, apparently grandfathered in under older, less restrictive rules. The rules that she had since changed to require board approval, ensuring that no one else could do what she had done without her permission. The blackout lasted 6 hours. When power returned at 9 that evening, I felt vindicated in my decision to install the generator. I had remained comfortable and productive while most of my neighbors suffered through a miserable afternoon and evening. 2 days later, the second blackout hit. This one started at 8 in the morning and lasted until 4 in the afternoon. Again, my generator performed flawlessly. Again, I worked through the outage without any interruption. That evening, Patricia sent an email to the entire HOA mailing list. The subject line was noise pollution during outages. In the email, she complained about certain residents who were running loud mechanical equipment during the blackouts, disturbing the peace of the neighborhood. She reminded everyone that HOA regulations prohibited excessive noise at all times, regardless of power outage status. She encouraged anyone experiencing noise disturbances to file formal complaints with the board. I knew the email was directed at me, even though she did not use my name. My generator was one of the quietest models available, designed specifically for residential use in areas with strict noise ordinances. But Patricia did not care about actual noise levels. She cared about control. I ignored the email. I had more important things to worry about, like the fact that Southwest Power and Electric had just announced that blackouts would increase in frequency and duration over the next several weeks until the heat wave broke. My propane tank was about half full. I called Desert Propane Services and scheduled a delivery for the following Tuesday, August 10th. The dispatcher confirmed my appointment for 9 in the morning. Everything was arranged. Tuesday morning arrived with yet another blackout. The power went out at 7:30 and my generator kicked on automatically. I was on my second cup of coffee, preparing for a video conference call at 10 when my doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Patricia standing on my porch, sweating in the already brutal morning heat. Her face was red and not just from the temperature. "Mr. Brennan, I am here to inform you that you need to shut down your generator immediately, she said. I blinked at her. Excuse me. Your generator is creating a noise disturbance. I have received multiple complaints from neighbors. You need to shut it down now. Patricia, it's 97 degrees outside right now and climbing. I have a work call in an hour. I am not shutting down my generator. If you refuse to comply with HOA regulations, I will have no choice but to call the police for a noise violation, she threatened. Call them, I said. My generator is well below the legal noise limit. I have the documentation. The police will tell you the same thing. Patricia's mouth became a thin line. We will see about that. She turned and walked back to her white Mercedes, pulling out her phone as she went. I closed the door and went back to my coffee, assuming that would be the end of it. The police would either not respond to such a ridiculous complaint, or they would come out, measure the noise, confirm I was in compliance, and leave. I did not expect what happened next. At 8:45, I received a text message from Desert Propane Services. Running about 15 minutes behind schedule. Driver will arrive approximately 9:15 a.m. No problem. I texted back confirming that was fine. At 9:20, my doorbell camera alerted me to motion in my driveway. I pulled up the app on my phone and saw the Desert Propane Services truck pulling up to my house. The driver, a young guy probably in his mid-20s, got out and started preparing to make the delivery. Then I saw Patricia's Mercedes pull up and stop directly behind the propane truck, blocking it in my driveway. I watched in disbelief as Patricia got out of her car and approached the driver. I could not hear what she was saying through the camera, but I could see the driver's confused expression. He was shaking his head, pointing to the house, clearly trying to explain that he had a delivery to make. I ran outside. Patricia, what are you doing? I called out as I approached. This commercial vehicle is in violation of HOA parking regulations, Patricia said loudly. Commercial vehicles are not permitted to park in resident driveways. He is not parking, he is making a delivery, I said, trying to keep my voice level. The regulation makes no distinction between parking and stopping, Patricia said. Commercial vehicles are prohibited. I turned to the driver. I am so sorry about this. Please just go ahead and make the delivery. Sir, I cannot do that, the driver said apologetically. She's blocking my truck. I cannot leave until she moves, and I cannot make the delivery with her standing here threatening to call the police. I will call the police if this vehicle is not removed immediately, Patricia said, her phone already in her hand. This is insane, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. I need this propane delivery. My generator is running on less than half a tank. Then you should have thought about that before installing unauthorized equipment, Patricia said smugly. The driver looked between us, clearly uncomfortable with being in the middle of a neighborhood dispute. Look, I have other deliveries scheduled. I cannot wait here all day. If this is going to be a problem, I need to move on to the next customer. No, wait, I said desperately. Patricia, move your car, right now. Not until this commercial vehicle leaves the property, she said. I pulled out my phone and called the non-emergency police line. If Patricia wanted to involve the cops, fine. We would involve the cops. The dispatcher took my information and said an officer would be sent when one became available. Non-emergency calls in Phoenix during a heat wave blackout were apparently not a high priority. Who knew? The propane truck driver looked at his watch. I am sorry, man. I really cannot wait. I have to stay on schedule. How long will it take to make the delivery? I asked. Maybe 15 minutes, he said. I looked at Patricia. 15 minutes, that is all. Then he will be gone and you can go back to making everyone's life miserable. Rules are rules, Mr. Brennan, Patricia said. The driver shook his head and started packing up his equipment. I have to go. You will need to reschedule. When is the next available appointment? I asked. Probably not until next week, he said. We are slammed right now with all the blackouts. Everyone is using their generators. My stomach dropped. Next week. My tank was going to run dry long before next week with the way blackouts were happening. Can you just try to come back later today? I pleaded. I will put in a note, but I cannot promise anything, the driver said. He climbed back into his truck and waited. Patricia stood there with her arms crossed, not moving. Patricia, move your car, I said, my voice low and angry. No, she said simply. We stood there in a stalemate for another 5 minutes. The driver honked his horn. Patricia did not move. Finally, she walked back to her Mercedes, got in, and pulled forward just enough for the truck to back out. As soon as the truck was out of my driveway, she pulled back in, blocking the space. If that commercial vehicle returns, I will have it towed, she announced. Then she got back in her car and drove away. I stood in my driveway in the blazing heat, watching the propane truck disappear down the street, and felt rage like I had never experienced before. Patricia had just blocked a necessary fuel delivery out of pure spite. She did not care that I needed that propane to keep my generator running. She did not care that I needed the generator to work and to keep my house livable during blackouts. She only cared about exerting her authority. I called Desert Propane Services back and tried to explain what happened. The dispatcher was sympathetic but firm. They could not guarantee another delivery attempt for at least 5 days, possibly longer. They were completely overwhelmed with demand. I tried calling other propane companies. Everyone was in the same situation. Completely booked, no available delivery slots, waitlists a week long or more. The police never showed up for my non-emergency call. I called back after 2 hours and was told that officers were dealing with heat-related emergencies and priority calls. A neighborhood parking dispute did not qualify. I went back inside my air-conditioned house and tried to focus on work. But I kept checking my generator's fuel gauge. The tank was at 43%. Based on the frequency of blackouts and how long they were lasting, I estimated I had maybe 3 or 4 days of runtime left before the tank ran dry. I needed that propane delivery, and Patricia Morrison had deliberately prevented it from happening. That night, the power came back on at 7:30. I shut down the generator to conserve fuel and hoped that maybe the blackouts would decrease in frequency. Maybe the heat wave would break early. Maybe I would luck into a propane delivery slot. None of those things happened. Wednesday brought another blackout from 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. 8 hours of runtime. My tank dropped to 31% Thursday, a 12-hour blackout from noon until midnight. My tank hit 18%. Friday morning, I woke up to another blackout that had started at 5 in the morning. My tank was down to 9%. At the current rate of consumption, I had maybe 6 or 7 hours of generator runtime left. I called every propane company within 50 miles of Scottsdale. Nobody could help me. The heat wave had created unprecedented demand. The entire greater Phoenix area was experiencing the same problem. At 10 in the morning, I was sitting at my desk trying to work when I heard a vehicle in my driveway. I pulled up my security camera and felt a surge of hope. It was a Desert Propane Services truck. Not my scheduled delivery, but maybe they had managed to fit me in. I ran outside just in time to see Patricia's Mercedes screeching into my driveway again, stopping directly behind the propane truck. The driver, a different person than Tuesday, got out looking annoyed. "Are you Mr. Brennan?" "Yes, I am so glad you are here," I said. "We had a cancellation and managed to squeeze you in," he said. but I need to make this fast. I have 3 more deliveries this afternoon." "Please go ahead," I said. Patricia emerged from her Mercedes like an avenging angel of suburban petness. "This commercial vehicle is not authorized to be here," she announced. "Not this again," the driver said, recognizing the situation immediately. "Lady, I have a job to do." "And I have rules to enforce," Patricia said. "Move this vehicle immediately or I will have it towed." "You cannot have it towed from a private driveway where it has permission to be," I said. "Watch me," Patricia said, pulling out her phone. She called a towing company. I could hear her side of the conversation as she explained that an unauthorized commercial vehicle was blocking a resident's driveway and needed to be removed immediately. The driver looked at me with an expression of disgust and frustration. "Is she serious right now?" "Unfortunately, yes," I said. "I do not have time for this," he said. "I have to go, please," I begged. "My tank is almost empty. I need this delivery." "Then you need to deal with your crazy neighbor," he said. "Because I am not waiting around for a tow truck and a police report and whatever other drama this is going to turn into." He climbed back into his truck. Patricia stood behind her Mercedes with her arms crossed, physically preventing him from backing out while simultaneously blocking any access to my fuel tank. "Madam, you need to move," the driver said through his window. "Not until you agree to leave," Patricia said. The driver laid on his horn for a full 10 seconds. Patricia did not move. Finally, the driver called his dispatch. I could not hear the conversation, but I could see his animated gestures and angry expression. When he hung up, he looked at me apologetically. "My supervisor says I have to leave." "We cannot be involved in whatever dispute you have going on here. You will have to reschedule." "There are no available slots to reschedule," I said desperately. "You do not understand. I need this propane." "I am sorry, man. I really am, but this is above my pay grade." Patricia finally moved her car enough for the truck to leave. As it pulled away, she looked at me with an expression of satisfaction. "You did this on purpose," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "You are deliberately blocking my fuel deliveries." "I am enforcing HOA regulations," Patricia said calmly. "If you have a problem with that, you can file a complaint with the board." "You are on the board, Patricia. You are the board," she shrugged. "Then I guess you are out of luck." She got back in her Mercedes and drove away. I stood in my driveway in 115-degree heat during a blackout and realized that Patricia had just ensured my generator would run out of fuel. She had done it deliberately, twice now, and there was absolutely nothing I could do about it in the short term. I went back inside, my air conditioning still running on the last fumes of my propane tank, and I made a decision. If Patricia wanted to play games, fine. We would play games, but she was not going to like how this particular game ended. I spent the rest of Friday afternoon documenting everything. I downloaded all the security camera footage of Patricia blocking the propane deliveries. I compiled every email, every letter, every fine, every interaction I had ever had with her. I organized it all into a folder and sent it to my lawyer with a note. "We need to talk about a harassment lawsuit and possibly a restraining order." My lawyer called me back within an hour. "This is actually unbelievable," he said. "She blocked emergency fuel deliveries during a power crisis. We can absolutely work with this, but you need to know that a lawsuit will take time, months probably, maybe longer." "I know," I said, "but I want it on record. I want to start the process." "Consider it started," he said. I also filed a formal complaint with the HOA board, knowing it would go nowhere but wanting it documented. And I filed a complaint with the Scottsdale City Code Enforcement Office, reporting Patricia for trespassing on my property, and for preventing a legitimate commercial service from accessing my home. Then I sat back and waited for my generator to die. It happened Saturday afternoon. The blackout had started at 11 in the morning. By 3:30, my generator started making a different sound, the engine struggling as it ran out of fuel. By 3:45, it shut down completely. The silence was immediate and oppressive. My air conditioning stopped. My internet router died. My refrigerator went quiet. Within 15 minutes, I could feel the temperature inside my house starting to rise. I opened windows, hoping for airflow, but the outside air was 118 degrees. Opening windows just made things worse. I closed them again and sat in my living room, sweating, and pulled out my phone to check Patricia's house on Google Maps Street View. Her house was 3 doors down from mine. Her generator was similar to mine, also propane powered. And if her installation was anything like the standard setup, her propane tank was probably in roughly the same location as mine. On the side of the house, screened from street view but accessible from the backyard. I thought about what Patricia had done. She had deliberately blocked essential services to my home, not once but twice. She had trespassed on my property to inspect my generator installation. She had abused her position as HOA president to harass me for years over petty, meaningless violations. And now, I was sitting in my house with no power, no air conditioning, and no way to work, all because Patricia Morrison could not stand the idea of someone installing a backup generator without her explicit approval, an idea formed in my mind. It was petty. It was probably not going to help anything in the long run, but it would feel really, really good. I waited until dark. The blackout was still ongoing, expected to last until at least 10 that night. My house was now 94 degrees inside. I was sitting in the dark, sweating through my clothes, drinking warm water from bottles because my refrigerator was no longer keeping anything cold. At 8:30, when the sky was fully dark and the neighborhood was quiet, I took a walk. Just a casual evening walk, the kind any resident might take. I walked down my street, past 2 neighbors' houses, and paused near Patricia's property. Her house was lit up like a Christmas tree. Every light was on, blazing defiantly in the darkness. I could hear her generator humming away on the side of her house, pumping out power while the rest of the neighborhood sat in the dark. I walked past her house and continued down the street, looping around the block. When I came back, I cut through the greenbelt area behind the houses. This was technically common area, maintained by the HOA, so I was not trespassing. From the greenbelt, I could see the backs of the houses, including Patricia's. Her backyard was fenced, but the fence was only 5 feet tall, easily visible over. I could see her pool, lit up with underwater lights. I could see her back patio, where she had a full outdoor kitchen setup. And I could see the side yard where her generator sat, humming away, next to what I assumed was her propane tank. I studied the setup from a distance. Her generator was identical to mine, a Generac model. Her tank was probably 500 gallons, just like mine. And I knew from my own experience that those tanks had a manual shut-off valve. I want to be very clear about what I did and did not do next, because it is important for the rest of this story. I did not touch Patricia's generator. I did not touch her propane tank. I did not trespass on her property. I did not damage or sabotage anything. What I did do was stand in the public greenbelt area and think about how karma works in mysterious ways. And then I went home and went to sleep on my couch because my bedroom was too hot. The blackout ended at 9:45 that night. Power returned to the neighborhood, and I was able to turn on my air conditioning again. It took until almost 2 in the morning for my house to cool down to a livable temperature. Sunday morning, I was awakened by shouting. I got up and looked out my front window. Several neighbors were standing in the street, looking toward Patricia's house. I could not see what they were looking at from my angle, so I got dressed and walked outside. Patricia's house was dark, completely dark. No lights, no sound of her generator. Other houses on the street had power, but Patricia's was dead. I walked closer, joining the small group of neighbors gathered on the sidewalk. That was when I saw Patricia in her front yard, still in her bathrobe, screaming at a man in a utility company uniform. "This is unacceptable," she was shrieking. "My power has been out since 6 this morning. It is 100 degrees out here. I demand you restore my power immediately." "Madam, there is nothing wrong with the power lines," the utility worker said patiently. "Your house is the only one on this street without power. That means the problem is with your home electrical system, not our grid. You need to call an electrician." "I am calling your supervisor," Patricia threatened. "This is completely unacceptable." The utility worker shrugged and walked back to his truck. Patricia stood in her yard, clutching her phone, her face red with rage and heat. I walked back to my house, poured myself a cup of coffee, and watched the show from my front window. Over the next hour, I watched Patricia make multiple phone calls. An electrician showed up around 10 and spent some time examining her electrical panel and generator setup. I saw him walk around to the side of her house where the generator was located. 20 minutes later, the electrician came back to the front yard where Patricia was waiting. I could not hear the conversation, but I could see Patricia's reaction. She threw her hands up in the air, yelled something at the electrician, and then stormed into her house. The electrician left. Patricia's house remained dark. Around noon, a propane company truck pulled up to Patricia's house. I watched with interest as the technician examined her generator and propane system. This visit lasted longer, maybe 45 minutes. When the technician finally left, Patricia came out of her house again, got into her Mercedes, and drove away. Probably going somewhere with air conditioning. The neighborhood group chat, which I usually ignored, was suddenly very active. "Anyone know what's wrong with Patricia's house?" "I heard her generator broke." "No, I think it's her electrical system. Karma for being such a nightmare to everyone." I did not contribute to the speculation. I just watched and waited. Patricia's house stayed dark all day Sunday. Another blackout hit the neighborhood from 3 to 8 that evening. My house, now powered by the electrical grid since I had no generator fuel, went dark along with everyone else's, except for the few neighbors who had their own backup power. Patricia's house stayed dark the entire time. No backup generator, no lights, nothing. Monday morning, another blackout started at 7. Again, my house went dark. I had made preparations over the weekend, buying battery-powered fans and making plans to work from a coffee shop if necessary. At 9:30, my doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Patricia standing there, and she looked terrible. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup was smeared, and she was wearing wrinkled clothes. She had clearly been suffering. "Ethan," she said, using my first name for the first time ever, "I need your help." I raised my eyebrows. "My help? My generator is not working," she said. "And my backup electrical system is fried. I have been without power for almost 48 hours. I cannot get a repair technician to come out until Wednesday. I was wondering if you could possibly run an extension cord from your house to mine, just enough to power a window AC unit." I stared at her in disbelief. This woman had spent 2 years making my life miserable. She had blocked my fuel deliveries twice, deliberately ensuring that my generator would run out of propane, and now she was asking me for help. "Patricia, my generator ran out of fuel," I said slowly, "because someone blocked my propane deliveries. Twice. Remember that, her face flushed. I was enforcing HOA regulations. You were abusing your power, I corrected. And now you want my help. I am asking as a neighbor, she said stiffly. Not as HOA president. The answer is no, I said. I do not have power right now either. We are in the middle of a blackout. And even when power comes back on, I am not helping you. You cannot be serious, Patricia said. It is dangerous to be without air conditioning in this heat. You are absolutely right, I said. It is dangerous, which is why I installed a backup generator, which needed fuel deliveries to operate, which you blocked. Patricia's expression hardened. I could fine you for refusing to assist a neighbor in distress. I laughed, actually laughed out loud. Fine me. Add it to all the other ridiculous fines. My lawyer is going to have a field day with all of this. Your lawyer? Patricia's voice rose. Are you threatening me? I am informing you that I have filed a harassment lawsuit against you and the HOA, I said. You deliberately prevented emergency service deliveries to my home during a power crisis. I have security camera footage of both incidents. I have witness statements from the Propane delivery drivers, and I have 2 years of documented harassment. Patricia's face went pale. You cannot sue the HOA. Watch me, I said. Now please get off my property. She opened her mouth to say something else, then closed it. She turned and walked back to her car, which was parked in my driveway again. I let her leave without commenting on the parking violation. I closed my door and felt absolutely no sympathy for her situation. She had created this problem herself through her own petty tyranny. Now she could deal with the consequences. The blackout ended around 1 that afternoon. Power returned to the neighborhood, including my house. Patricia's house remained dark. Whatever was wrong with her electrical system was more than just a simple fix. Tuesday brought another blackout from 10 in the morning until 6 at night. I worked from a local coffee shop that had backup power. When I returned home that evening, I saw that Patricia's house still had no lights. Wednesday morning, I was working from home when I noticed multiple vehicles at Patricia's house. An electrical contractor truck, 2 workers carrying equipment, and Patricia herself supervising everything. The repairs apparently took most of the day. By late afternoon, I saw lights come back on in Patricia's house. Her generator, however, remained silent. Whatever had happened to it was apparently not fixable or not fixed yet. Thursday, I received an email from the HOA board. I was being fined $500 for failure to maintain property aesthetics and improper installation of mechanical equipment. The email was signed by Patricia and all 5 board members. I forwarded the email to my lawyer along with a note, adding this to the lawsuit. Friday morning, I received a call from Desert Propane Services. They had an opening for a delivery that afternoon. Could I be available? I said yes immediately. The dispatcher confirmed a time between 2 and 4. At 1:45, I received a text from Patricia. Be advised that commercial vehicles are not permitted in resident driveways. Any violations will be reported and towed. I texted back, if you block my fuel delivery again, I will call the police and file criminal charges for interference with a utility service. I did not know if that was an actual crime, but it sounded good. At 2:30, the Desert Propane Services truck pulled into my driveway. I went outside immediately and stood by the driver's door as he got out. Any problems? He asked, clearly having been warned about previous incidents. Maybe, I said, but we are going to complete this delivery no matter what. I had my phone out recording video. If Patricia showed up, I was documenting everything. The driver worked quickly, hooking up his hoses to my tank and starting the fuel transfer. The process would take about 15 minutes. At 2:38, Patricia's Mercedes appeared at the end of my driveway. She did not pull in. She could not, because the propane truck was fully in the driveway and there was no room. But she stopped in the street, got out, and started walking toward us. "What did I tell you about commercial vehicles?" she called out. "What did I tell you about blocking my deliveries?" I called back, holding up my phone to show I was recording. Patricia saw the phone and hesitated. She stood at the edge of my driveway, clearly wanting to interfere but aware that she was being recorded. "This is a violation of HOA regulations," she said. "Then file a complaint," I said. "But this delivery is happening." "I am calling the police," Patricia said, pulling out her phone. "Great idea," I said. "Please do. Tell them you are blocking a utility service delivery during a heat emergency. I am sure they will be very interested." Patricia actually did call. I could hear her talking to the police dispatcher, trying to explain that a commercial vehicle was parked illegally in a resident's driveway. The driver finished the fuel transfer while Patricia was still on the phone. He disconnected his hoses, packed up his equipment, and handed me the delivery receipt. "All set," he said. "Your tank is full." "Thank you," I said. "I really appreciate you coming out." He climbed back into his truck and backed out of my driveway. Patricia had to move out of the way to let him pass. After the truck left, Patricia walked up to me. "You are going to pay for this," she said. "No, Patricia," I said calmly. "You are going to pay for this. My lawyer has everything documented. Every fine, every violation notice, every harassing email, and both instances of you blocking my fuel deliveries. You abused your position as HOA president to settle a personal grudge, and you interfered with essential services to my home. That is going to have consequences." "The HOA board will back me up," Patricia said, but she sounded less certain now. "We'll see," I said. "I plan to send every board member a copy of my security camera footage showing you blocking my fuel deliveries. Let's see if they want to be included in a harassment lawsuit." Patricia opened her mouth, closed it, and then walked back to her car without another word. That evening, I received an email from Denise, Patricia's best friend on the HOA board and the vice president. The email was short. "We need to talk about Patricia's recent actions regarding your property. Can you meet with me privately?" I called my lawyer first. He advised me to meet with Denise but to record the conversation and be very careful about what I agreed to. I met Denise at a Starbucks on Saturday morning. She looked uncomfortable and kept glancing around as if worried someone might see us together. "Ethan, I want to start by apologizing," she said. "I did not know the full extent of what Patricia has been doing. When you sent that security camera footage to the board yesterday, it was the first time I had seen evidence of her blocking your propane deliveries. You signed off on all the fines she sent me," I pointed out. "I know," Denise said miserably. "Patricia runs the board meetings. She tells us what to vote on, and we vote. I did not realize she was lying about some of the violations, or that she was actively preventing you from maintaining your generator." "So what happens now?" I asked. "Some of us on the board want Patricia to resign," Denise said. "She's making the HOA look terrible, and frankly, she's exposing us to legal liability. But she is refusing. She says you are the problem, not her." "I installed a legal generator with all proper permits and followed every HOA rule," I said. "Patricia decided she did not like it and has been harassing me ever since." "I believe you," Denise said. "And I think other board members believe you too. But Patricia has been president for 6 years. She has a lot of support in the neighborhood, or at least she did until recently." "What do you want from me?" I asked. "I want to know what it would take for you to drop the lawsuit," Denise said. I sat back and thought about it. My lawyer had told me that we had a strong case, but lawsuits were expensive, time-consuming, and stressful. If I could get what I wanted without going through months or years of litigation, that would be preferable. Patricia resigns from the board immediately, I said. All fines against me are rescinded and refunded. The HOA revises its regulations to explicitly allow backup generators without requiring board approval, and I want a written apology from the board acknowledging that I did nothing wrong and that Patricia abused her authority. Denise nodded slowly. I think I can make that happen. Let me talk to the other board members. You have 1 week, I said. After that, my lawyer proceeds with the lawsuit and we include everyone on the board who signed off on Patricia's actions. Denise paled but nodded. I understand. Over the next week, things happened quickly. Denise apparently had more influence with the other board members than I had realized, or perhaps they were simply terrified of being included in a lawsuit. On Tuesday, I received an email that an emergency HOA board meeting had been called for Thursday evening. I attended the meeting. So did about 40 other residents, which was unusual. Normally, only 5 or 6 people showed up to HOA meetings besides the board members themselves. Patricia sat at the head of the table, looking defiant. The other board members looked uncomfortable. Denise stood up and addressed the room. Thank you all for coming. We have called this emergency meeting to address concerns about HOA governance and specifically about the conduct of our president, Patricia Morrison. Patricia's head snapped toward Denise. Excuse me. Several board members have reviewed security camera footage and other documentation showing that you deliberately interfered with utility service deliveries to a resident's home. Denise continued. This is a serious abuse of your authority as HOA president and potentially exposes the HOA to significant legal liability. This is ridiculous, Patricia said, her voice shrill. I was enforcing HOA regulations. You were settling a personal grudge, Denise said firmly. And in doing so, you violated the law. Interfering with utility services can be prosecuted as a criminal offense under Arizona Revised Statutes, Section 13-1803. I had not known that, but apparently my lawyer had educated the board members. Good for him. The board has voted in your absence to ask for your resignation, Denise said, effective immediately. Patricia stood up, her face bright red. You cannot do this. We can and we have, said Martin, another board member who I had never heard speak before. The vote was 4-0 with you abstaining since you were not present. I will fight this, Patricia said. I will sue the HOA. You can try, Denise said, but I would not recommend it. The evidence against you is extensive. Patricia looked around the room, apparently hoping for support from the residents who were watching. She found none. People either looked away or stared back at her with expressions ranging from satisfaction to contempt. Patricia grabbed her bag and stormed out of the meeting. The door slammed behind her. Denise took a deep breath and continued. The board has also voted to rescind all fines issued to Ethan Brennan related to his backup generator installation. These fines were improperly assessed. Mr. Brennan's generator installation was legal, properly permitted, and in full compliance with all relevant regulations. She looked directly at me. On behalf of the board, I apologize for the harassment you have endured. It should never have happened. The room was silent. Then someone started clapping. Others joined in. I sat there, surprised and a little embarrassed by the applause. After the meeting, several neighbors approached me to apologize for not speaking up sooner. They had all been afraid of Patricia's retaliation, but they were glad someone had finally stood up to her. I went home that night feeling vindicated but also emotionally exhausted. 2 years of stress and harassment had finally come to an end. The following week, I received a formal letter from the HOA board. All my fines were rescinded. The HOA regulations were being revised to explicitly allow backup generators with proper permits, and the letter included a written apology signed by all 4 remaining board members. I forwarded everything to my lawyer and asked if we should proceed with the lawsuit anyway. He advised me that we had accomplished everything we had asked for, and that proceeding further would be expensive and time-consuming without much additional benefit. I agreed. The lawsuit was dropped. Patricia Morrison did not go quietly into the night, however. She sent a lengthy email to the entire HOA mailing list, claiming she had been forced out by a conspiracy and that the board had acted illegally. The email was unhinged, rambling, and full of accusations against me, Denise, and several other neighbors. Denise responded with a brief email stating that Patricia's characterization of events was inaccurate, and that anyone who wanted to review the evidence could request copies of relevant documentation from the board secretary. Nobody took Patricia up on her claims. Her email was largely ignored. Over the next month, the heat wave finally broke. Temperatures dropped back down to a merely miserable 105 degrees. The rolling blackouts decreased in frequency and eventually stopped altogether. My generator sat quietly on its pad, my propane tank full and ready for the next emergency. I never had another problem with fuel deliveries. Patricia's house went up for sale in early September. I heard through the neighborhood gossip chain that she and her husband were moving to Nevada. Nobody seemed sad to see them go. Denise became the new HOA president. Under her leadership, the board actually became reasonable. They focused on maintaining common areas and handling necessary business instead of micromanaging everyone's property. In October, I received a call from my lawyer. "I have some interesting news," he said. "Patricia Morrison has been charged with criminal interference with a utility service." "What?" I said. "How did that happen?" "Apparently someone at the City Code Enforcement Office reviewed your complaint and forwarded it to the prosecutor's office," my lawyer explained. "They looked at the security camera footage and decided that deliberately blocking fuel deliveries to a backup generator during a heat emergency met the criteria for criminal charges." "Is that going to go anywhere?" I asked. "Probably not to trial," he said. "She'll likely take a plea deal for a misdemeanor, pay a fine, and that will be it. But it will go on her record." I thought about that. Part of me felt satisfied that Patricia was facing real consequences for her actions. Another part of me just wanted the whole thing to be over. "Thanks for letting me know," I said. "One more thing," my lawyer said. "The HOA's insurance company reached out. They want to settle the potential lawsuit preemptively. They're offering you $10,000 to sign a release stating you won't sue the HOA or any board members." "What do you think I should do?" I asked. "Take the money," he said. "You've already gotten everything else you wanted. This is just a bonus." I agreed. The settlement was finalized in November. $10,000 was deposited into my account, and I signed a release agreeing not to pursue any further legal action against the HOA or its board members. Patricia Morrison eventually pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor charge of interference with utility services. She paid a fine of $1,000 and received 1 year of probation. The prosecutor had apparently taken the case seriously because of the heat emergency circumstances and the fact that Patricia had blocked multiple delivery attempts. December brought cooler weather and, finally, a sense of normalcy. The neighborhood returned to its usual quiet routine. The new HOA board under Denise's leadership was competent and unobtrusive. I could focus on my work and my life without worrying about violation notices and harassment. One evening in mid-December, I was sitting on my back patio enjoying the finally pleasant weather when my doorbell rang. I went to answer it and found a woman I did not recognize standing on my porch. She was probably in her 30s, professionally dressed, holding a folder. "Mr. Brennan?" she asked. "Yes. My name is Rebecca Hayes. I'm a reporter with the Arizona Republic. I'm doing a story about HOA abuses in Phoenix area suburbs, and your case with Patricia Morrison came up in my research. Would you be willing to talk to me about what happened?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to put the whole thing behind me, but another part of me thought that maybe sharing my story could help other people dealing with similar situations. "Come in," I said. We sat in my living room and I told her everything. The solar panel dispute, the 2 years of harassment, the generator installation, and Patricia blocking my fuel deliveries during the heat emergency. Rebecca took notes and asked thoughtful questions. "This is exactly the kind of story I'm investigating," she said. "HOA boards that abuse their authority and make life miserable for residents. You're not alone. I've talked to dozens of people with similar experiences." "What can anyone do about it?" I asked. "The HOA rules are legally binding. They can fine you and put liens on your house if you don't pay." "That's part of what I'm exploring in my article," Rebecca said. "There's actually a movement in the Arizona legislature to reform HOA laws and give homeowners more protections. Your case, especially the criminal charges against Patricia Morrison, is a great example of why those reforms are needed." "Use whatever you want from my story," I said. "If it helps someone else, it's worth it." The article ran in January 2026, just a few days ago. It was a lengthy investigative piece about HOA abuses across the Phoenix metro area, and my case with Patricia was featured prominently. The article included quotes from me, copies of some of the violation notices I had received, and still images from my security camera footage showing Patricia blocking the propane delivery truck. The response was overwhelming. The article went viral on social media. I received dozens of messages from people sharing their own HOA horror stories. Several state legislators commented publicly that they were committed to pushing through HOA reform legislation. Patricia Morrison's name was in the article, along with the fact that she had been convicted of criminal interference with utility services. I did not feel bad about that. She had brought it on herself. Today, as I write this, things are finally calm. My generator sits ready for the next emergency. My solar panels generate clean energy without any HOA interference, and I can focus on living my life instead of fighting with petty neighborhood tyrants. The experience taught me several things. First, document everything. Every interaction, every violation notice, every incident. You never know when you will need that evidence. Second, know your rights. HOA regulations cannot supersede state and federal law, no matter how much the board wants them to. Third, sometimes you have to stand up to bullies, even when it is stressful and expensive, because giving in only encourages them to keep going. And finally, I learned that karma really does work in mysterious ways. Patricia Morrison spent 2 years trying to make my life miserable, because I had dared to install a backup generator without her permission. In the end, her own generator failed at the worst possible time, and her attempts to block my fuel deliveries led to criminal charges and her resignation from the board she had controlled for 6 years. I did not sabotage her generator. I did not touch her equipment. I did not trespass on her property. But I also did not help her when she came begging for assistance after spending 2 years harassing me. And when her own actions led to consequences, I did not feel even a little bit sorry for her. The sound of my generator sputtering to empty during that final blackout was frustrating in the moment. But in hindsight, it was the catalyst that finally brought everything to a head. If my generator had not run out of fuel, I might have continued enduring Patricia's harassment indefinitely, too worn down to fight back effectively. Instead, her blocking of my fuel deliveries during a heat emergency was so egregious, so clearly over the line, that even the other HOA board members could not defend her. It was the proof I needed that Patricia's actions were not about enforcing rules but about personal vendetta and abuse of power. Sometimes the best thing you can do when someone tries to make you suffer is to let them see the natural consequences of their own actions. I did not have to destroy Patricia Morrison. She destroyed herself through her own petty tyranny and refusal to show basic human decency. Today, I sit in my comfortably air-conditioned home, my generator ready if needed, my propane tank full, and my HOA board reasonable and functional. Patricia Morrison is gone, living somewhere in Nevada and hopefully learning that you cannot treat people terribly without eventually facing consequences. And me, I am just a guy who wanted to install a backup generator in peace. I got a lot more drama than I bargained for, but in the end, I got what I wanted: a functional backup power system and freedom from harassment. The whole experience reminded me why I left rainy Seattle in the first place. I wanted a quiet life in the desert sun, working from home and enjoying the Arizona landscape. Patricia Morrison threatened to take that away from me, but in the end, she failed. As I finish writing this account, I can hear my neighbors outside enjoying the pleasant January evening. The heat wave is long over. The power grid is stable. Life in Scrutiny Heights has returned to normal, but it is a better normal than before, with a more reasonable HOA board and community members who are a little more aware of the importance of standing up to abuse. My lawyer still has all the documentation filed away, just in case, but I do not think I will need it again. Patricia is gone, and the new board has shown no interest in harassing me or anyone else over petty violations. Sometimes the best revenge is not revenge at all. It is simply standing your ground, documenting the abuse, and letting the system work as it is supposed to. Patricia Morrison found out the hard way that abusing your power as an HOA president can lead to criminal charges, public humiliation, and being forced to leave the neighborhood you tried to control. I found out that standing up for yourself, even when it is hard and stressful, is worth it in the end. My home is my castle, and nobody has the right to make my life miserable just because they have a title and a little bit of authority. The generator that Patricia tried so hard to force me to remove is still sitting on its pad, humming quietly whenever I test it monthly. My solar panels still generate power every sunny day, which in Arizona is most days. And I still live in my house in Scrutiny Heights, comfortable and content. Patricia Morrison tried to make me leave. Instead, she left. That feels like justice to me.